All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible rules that pretty much run our digital lives. We're talking about the architecture of access control. The hidden gatekeepers that are constantly deciding who gets in and who stays out. Let's dive in. Seriously, just think about it for a second. From your social media account to your company's most sensitive data, there's a system in the background always asking one simple question. Who are you? And should you really be here? And this isn't some abstract idea. It is the absolute foundation of all digital security. So, the easiest way to picture access control is to think of it like a digital bouncer. It stands at the door of every single system, every file, every network, and it's there, checking IDs and deciding who gets past that virtual velvet rope. Its whole job is just to manage who can access what and under exactly what conditions. So how does this digital bouncer actually make its decisions? Well, it's not just random guesswork. It follows a really clear logical process that security pros often call the 3 A's, although really there's a fourth one that's just as important.
And here is that whole cycle in a nutshell. It all starts with authentication, which is just confirming you are who you say you are. Next up is authorization, and this is the crucial step of checking what you're actually allowed to do. Then, based on that, you're either granted or denied access. And finally, and this is the part people forget, everything you do is audited. It's all logged, creating a digital paper trail. It's this constant loop of checking, permitting, and recording.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that very first super critical step, authentication. Before absolutely anything else can happen, the system has to be sure of your identity. Everything, and I mean everything that comes after, hinges on correctly answering this one simple question. So how does it do that? Well, it checks for one, or sometimes more, of these three things. First, something you know, like a password or a PIN. Second, something you have, like your phone or a physical security key. And third, something you are. We're talking biometrics here, like your fingerprint or your face. The really strong security systems, they're going to combine at least two of these. Okay, so once a system knows who you are, it needs a rulebook to decide what you can do. And believe me, this is not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. Different environments need different kinds of rules, or what we call access control models. Let's take a look at the 5 main ones. We're going to kick things off with the most common model, the one you've almost definitely bumped into, probably without even realizing it. It's called Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC for short. And it's so popular for one big reason. It's incredibly efficient. And here's the core idea behind it. With RBAC, the system literally doesn't care that you're John or Jane Smith. All it cares about is the role you've been assigned. Are you a manager, an editor, a guest, an admin? Your permissions are tied to the job title, not to you as a person. Here is a perfect example. In a university's online system, anyone who's assigned the professor role automatically gets permission to go in and edit grades. But anyone with the student role, they can only view them. See, the system just has to manage a handful of roles, not thousands of individual students and professors. It makes life so much simpler. Okay, so our next two models really get to the heart of a big philosophical debate in security. Who should have the final say on who gets access? Should it be the person who actually created the resource, or should it be the system itself? This lays out the two opposing views perfectly. Over on the left, we've got discretionary access control, or DAC, where the owner gets to call all the shots. And on the right, you have mandatory access control, or MAC, where a central authority sets the rules, and nobody, not even the owner of the file, can change them. It's the ultimate trade-off, flexibility versus absolute control. DAC is the model we're probably most familiar with in our daily lives. When you create a Google Doc or a file on your computer, you, the owner, have the discretion to decide exactly who gets to see it and who gets to edit it. It's super flexible, but it can get messy and maybe even a little insecure if people aren't careful with their sharing settings. Mac, on the other hand, is a whole different beast. It's built for places where security is non-negotiable, like in the military or government agencies. A file gets labeled top secret by the system. To see it, you need to have top secret clearance. That's it. So even if you're the person who wrote that file, you can't just decide to share it with a friend. The system's rules are mandatory. It's incredibly secure, but also very, very rigid. So the models we've looked at so far are pretty static, kind of black and white. But what if access needs to change based on the situation? What if it needs to be more dynamic? Well, that's where our next model comes in, and it takes a much more flexible, context-aware approach.
This is attribute-based access control, or ABAC, and this thing is smart. Instead of just checking who you are, ABAC looks at a whole set of attributes. You can see here in the policy rules, it can check things like, is the user in the engineering department? Is the file they're trying to access marked confidential? Heck, is it even between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.? Access is only granted if all the attributes line up perfectly with the policy. It's incredibly powerful and lets you get super granular with your rules.
All right, now for a completely different way of thinking about this. Instead of having the system look up a big rule book every single time you ask for something, what if it just gives you a special key? A key that has all the rules built right into it. This is called Capability-Based Access Control, or CBAC. A great analogy is a valet key for your car. The key itself, the token, has limitations. For example, a web API might give you a token that only grants read-only access for the next 15 minutes. That token is the proof of your permission, and it defines exactly what you can do and for how long. No need to check a central rulebook every time. Okay, so we've gone through the core process, we've looked at the 5 big models. But why is getting this right more important right now than it has ever been? Let's connect these ideas to the challenges we're all facing in the real world. The reality is our digital world is complex. Our networks aren't simple anymore. We have data on servers in the office, stuff floating around in multiple clouds, and it's spread all across the globe. Trying to manage who has access to what in that kind of complicated, distributed environment is one of the single biggest challenges in tech today. So to succeed in this kind of world, any modern authorization system really has to do 3 things well. It absolutely has to be scalable enough to handle potentially millions of users. It needs to provide fine-grained controls so you're not giving people overly broad permissions. And of course, it has to deliver rock-solid security, no matter where that resource actually lives. And to bring this all back home, if you have ever used a VPN to connect to your work or school network, you have used a powerful access control tool. It's doing exactly what we've been talking about. It's authenticating who you are, and then it's authorizing you to see only the specific parts of that private network you're allowed to see. Which brings us right back to that fundamental question. We've seen models where the owner has all the control, and we've seen models where a central system makes all the rules. As our lives move more and more online, the question of who should ultimately hold the keys and what rules they should be forced to follow, it's becoming one of the most important questions of our time.